Good morning. Welcome to Ag Talking to Raw, where I talk raw about agriculture and other things that are on my mind. Let me get adjusted in my seat here before I start. If you didn't know, my computer had crashed. I've lost everything. This happens every once in a while, which is no big deal. The videos that I want are out online. The other things that I have are on these little potato chips that I have. So for the most part, if I want to keep it, I take the SD card out and throw it in here. So it's no big deal. The problem is that I've lost my editing software, which really sucks because that editing software was $300. And usually when you reboot the system, the way this thing crashed, it just slowed down and slowed down and slowed down. And I was only about half full on my hard drive, which is no big deal, because I usually do a data dump anyway and then get it all back together. I put them in these Western Digital hard drives or put it on the cloud. But the cloud the cloud isn't working for me for some fucked up reason. But anyways, that's just what's going on. So that's why there's been a slowdown to no videos. I did a live stream yesterday and said some things that I probably shouldn't have said, not really shouldn't have said. They needed to be said. I just didn't want there to be a whole controversy, but this is a different channel. So anyway, what I'm going to talk about today really isn't, too ultra important to agriculture. I probably will touch on some of the things that I am doing and what I want to do in agriculture, and some other things that that are affecting me in the farm and the things that are affecting the world. So let's start with affecting the world before I get into agriculture, because everything that I'm going to talk about is affecting the world, because agriculture is key to the world's survival. I'm not saying that the whole world population would die if people like me stopped working or stopped producing food for them to, eat cheaply and buy expensive things and bitch about what they have to pay for food. But the first thing is the political thing that I'm going to talk about. So if you're not interested in this, you can click off now and that's fine. I'm okay with it. You can, either fast forward to about the 10-minute mark, because I don't think it's going to take much more than 10 minutes to talk about this. But so yesterday, Nancy Pelosi. Now we gotta talk about Nancy Pelosi a little bit. She actually said something that I agreed with, and a lot of people on the right side of the aisle and even the left side of the aisle do not agree with it. They don't agree with it because what she said was, "Hey, while you're in China, don't do anything to piss off the Chinese government." Now she wasn't. I honestly don't think that she was, and I'm defending her on this one just a little bit, but there's more. She should have said more than what she did, but she basically said to the athletes and the people that are going to support our athletes, which in my opinion, we shouldn't even be there. I think that the Chinese should be held accountable for the lockdowns for the last 2 years, the loss of life that was brought in from them, the fact that they shut down travel within their country but allowed their people to leave their country so that it would spread all over the world. Yeah, that sort of a thing. I actually think it was planned. These are just my opinions. I think it was planned between world leaders to basically get Donald Trump out of office. And honestly, I think it worked. It's backfiring now because, you can't stop something. You can't stop something that is out of control. It's like you ever watch the movie Armageddon? When the asteroid's coming to Earth, they stopped it through something that would never ever work, because it was a movie and we had to have a happy ending. We're not going to get a happy ending out of this. Believe it or not, we can go back 104 years ago. The Spanish flu. Spanish flu pandemic was actually started by the Rockefeller Center. They were vaccinating soldiers in the United States for diseases that they could possibly get before they went to war in Europe during World War I. The Spanish flu, like everybody thinks it started in Spain, didn't start in Spain. It started with a soldier, a soldier in the middle of this country, the United States of America, and it spread extremely fast. Now, the internet wasn't a thing last time something crazy like this happened. If you don't know, oh my God, if you don't, I'm going to get into a deep rabbit hole here, but if you don't know, Rockefeller, yes, the oil tycoon Rockefeller, he was the oil tycoon. He was Standard Oil. When they realized that they could make modern medicines out of oil, he basically started a campaign with millions and billions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars, to shut down homeopathic or plant-based medications because he couldn't make money on those, you know. He could not make money on those. Like Bayer aspirin, right? You take a Bayer aspirin, nobody really makes money on aspirin other than Bayer, but the generic aspirins, you go in, you got a headache, and, you know, you're like, oh man, I need some aspirin, or, you know, you just want to take some aspirin because your doctor said, hey, take a couple of baby aspirins. They make zero money on that. I mean, it's like a $2 bottle of aspirin will last you a year. You know, whereas Advil, which could be, I don't even know what Advil costs, or Tylenol. Tylenol is another one that's fairly, well, they're running the generics on all of these now, but still, the name brands, when people go for a headache, the first thing they do is they go for something that's more expensive than an aspirin, even though aspirin comes from the root of the asper tree. So, anyway, I believe it's the asper tree. So, but whatever. Vanderbilt did a lot to, or all, did everything he possibly could to debunk the medications that were already on the market, homeopathics or herbal medications and stuff that has been developed over the last, you know, the previous 1,000 years or so, through trial and error and just grinding and adding and mixing and coming up with ways to stop everything from worms to headaches, you know. So Vanderbilt did that. He also was one of the first to, well, the Vanderbilt Institute was the first vaccines that came out through the oil from petroleum oil-based medications. So the Spanish flu was the result of a vaccine, and it came in like a whirlwind, and it went out like a whirlwind. Like you stop, it wasn't, you know, it left pretty quickly. It was like here today, gone tomorrow. Only, I don't know, 5.8 million people died in that 6 or 8 month period of time. He was never held accountable for it. Nobody was. It was the Spanish flu. They gave it that name because they didn't want it to be called the American flu, I guess. And back then, if you had, and it's the same as today, if you have billions of dollars, you are, you know, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can shut people up. You can make them talk. You can do whatever you want. So today we have the COVID-19. All right. So COVID-19 was a Chinese thing. It was released. The Chinese should be held accountable for it. They really should. They should have never gotten the. They should have never ever gotten the Olympics. The Olympic Committee, even if they were granted the Olympics before the pandemic, the Olympic Committee should have said, "Hey, you know what? You're irresponsible. You're a communist party. You don't have you're killing the Uyghurs or whatever the hell they call those people. There's mass genocide there, and this isn't the first time that this has happened. The Tibetans, what they did to Tibet, and the Tibetans back when they had their other Olympics back in 2002, I think, the Beijing Olympics in 2002. So we're talking 20 years ago. They were fucking with the Tibetans and all that stuff. I remember it. I remember Free Tibet. Most people don't because they just don't care. And it's the same thing right now. There's a lot of people out there that don't care what China does to, you know, a poor religious group outside of Beijing, you know, as long as they can go and throw a ball or run real fast or ski down a hill or, you know, snowboard through a pipe or whatever the hell they do, bobsled it in like Mach 35 because, you know, that's just the way it is. Now, I've always enjoyed the Winter Olympics. I like Olympic hockey. I don't watch hockey at all, ever. except Olympic hockey. I will, when I find out that the United States is going to play their game against whoever it is that they're playing against, I love to watch Olympic hockey. I think it's because of the 1980 Olympics. I believe it was the 80 Olympics. 80, 1980, well, whatever Olympics it was, 80 or 84. I don't even remember. Whatever Olympics it was when the United States beat the Russian hockey team. And it was like a huge upset for them. You know, it was like, oh my God, the U.S. beat Russia. And I remember it, and I watched it. And for some reason, ever since then, Olympic hockey is played on a bigger court or rink than it is in like the National Hockey League, NHL. But whatever, that's just fine. I'm gonna miss it this year because I'm boycotting the Olympics at home. I'm not gonna watch it. I would like to know who's playing what downstairs. But anyways, the Olympic hockey, I'm going to miss it this year. I'm not watching it. And I encourage everybody here that's watching this to not watch it. Don't watch the Olympics. Don't watch the opening ceremonies. Don't watch the closing ceremonies. Don't give a rat's ass about anything that goes on over there until someone decides to pull their head out of their ass and hold the Chinese accountable for this stuff that they're doing and have done. Now we've got a vaccine, right? And I'm going to diss the vaccine, and people are probably going to report me for this, but I don't give a fuck. The vaccine, okay? So back when the vaccine was released, by Donald Trump. It wasn't released, it was Donald Trump was the president at the time that it was released. It was released by Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna. And it was supposed to stop this thing, right? It didn't stop this thing. It was supposed to stop you from spreading it, stop you from getting it, stop you from having to wear a mask, and all this other happy horse shit that it did not do. Shortly after they released the vaccine for the first time, when they released it back, God knows, I don't know, 2020, was it 2020? Yeah, 2020. In 2020, what was it, like August, September, something like that, just before Donald Trump was ousted by fraudulent means, in my opinion. The reason I say fraudulent means is because the media is not reporting on these forensic audits and what they're finding in the forensic audits, because there will be fraud that's released. I've watched this on many occasions, on many different things, and news reports that go nowhere because nobody thinks that it was possible to have happen. They have ballot harvesters that were they caught them by their telephones. Right? Their telephones. So ballot harvesting, they had drop-off ballot boxes all around these different cities, and the same phone numbers, the same telephones were pinging off of towers and cellular repeaters at the same one in the vicinity of each one of those ballot drop-off boxes. Nobody's heard of this because they bury it. Twitter takes it down. Facebook shuts it down. YouTube shuts it down. They all shut it down. But that's a fact. That happened. You could probably look it up on DuckDuckGo. You will be able to find it there as to how they found out that these ballot harvesters were. It's not a coincidence either. When you've got 20 different ballot boxes and the same phone number is bouncing off of these ballot boxes, and it's not just one guy. There was many different phone numbers. Many different people were dropping off these forged documents into these drop-off boxes. And the reason it didn't happen this go-around was because they had people watching and monitoring the drop-off boxes. And if you don't remember, for this last election in November, this past November 2021, where they unseated the Virginia governor, pretty damn close to the New Jersey governor. I wish this New Jersey governor was gone. He's just useless for us. My taxes went up just like he promised. On this house alone, $600. Tim's house, it went up another $400. And that's insane per year. I know there's people in this country that don't pay $600 a year in taxes. Mine's at $7,000 on this house on an acre and a half. I'm not even going to tell you what the farm is. Tim's house is $5,000. His house is a little bit smaller than this one. But anyways, I should probably appeal them both. So, anyways, whatever. They watch these ballot boxes. Back to the Chinese government and why we should be boycotting or not even watching the Olympics, or why they shouldn't even have the Olympics. Um, when they released the vaccine, they found out very quickly that it didn't prevent people from getting COVID. It didn't prevent people from spreading COVID, and it basically was a scam. Does it slow down the death rate? No. More people died in the same amount of time under Joe Biden as they did under Donald Trump by, I don't know, in the tens of thousands, according to, the death certificates or the death rates or the reports of COVID deaths. So Joe Biden was elected. I'm going to stop this virus in its tracks. Well, he can't. It doesn't happen that way. So when we started to get these vaccines, they said, oh, you can take your mask off, you can go into restaurants and movie theaters, and you can fly, you can do whatever you want. If you're vaccinated, you don't have to. Just like 104 years ago, they had this vaccine that spread it around. Once they stopped the vaccine, then it kind of went away. At least, fortunately, it did. But the flu is still out there, just that strain of flu. And it wasn't a flu either. It was a bacteria. But anyway, whatever. Let's get past that. The vaccines have done more to spread COVID and produce these variants like Delta and Omicron. And these are all facts. Don't think I'm some right-wing nut job. I'm not. I believe that it's here to stay. There's two types of people in this world: the type that have had it, the type that are going to get it, the type that live, and the type that die. So I guess there's four types. There's, I've had it. Did I ever feel that I was going to die? No. Did I feel that? Let me think here. I'm just kind of trying to think. Did I feel like I felt depressed? I will say that. I just was talking to my wife about it. I'm like, I'm either depressed or I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I took the Ivomec, and 3 days later, boom, I'm back to work. Wasn't that an amazing thing, right? So people say, oh, well, that Ivomec, you're just whatever, carrot top and something, whatever. Somebody called me a carrot head, meaning I'm a Trump supporter, which I am. Joe and the Ho, they gotta go. Unfortunately, it's going to be 3 more years before we get a new president and vice president. I'm just hoping that the House and the Senate get removed. They remove the Democrats from power because they're just doing more to destroy everything that we work for, like higher taxes. Oh, my fuel, it used to cost $450 to fill the truck. Now it's $900. $900 and change, and I post those on Instagram. But let's get back to Nancy Pelosi here. So Nancy Pelosi stands up and she doesn't stand up, she sits down, because she can't stand. She's 84 years old or 83 years old. She's old. She shouldn't even be in a position like that. At 83 years old, people don't drive anymore. They realize that they're in cognitive decline. This woman, her hair is falling out. She doesn't even have eyebrows anymore. They have to paint them on in various different directions. And if you ever watch her, you're like, man, did she go to, the place where clowns get makeup? It's crazy. I mean, she might even have a little plastic thing she puts over her head and goes like this, and somebody fucked with her and changed it so she looks like a clown. But whatever, that's just my opinion on Nancy Pelosi. So she stands up and she says, don't do anything to piss off the Chinese government. And basically, they're ruthless. They will put you in jail, and you'll rot there, and we're not going to get you out. That's basically what she said. So I agree with the one statement is, hey, don't do anything to upset the Chinese government. But then what she should have said in verbatim was, and to the Chinese government, if you do anything to our athletes, you will suffer the consequences and the full weight of the United States of America. And, put a little fear in them. But right now, she basically left it open. So now the Chinese government's like, oh yeah, these Americans, they say one thing about Xi Jinping or whatever the fuck is ding dong dang. We're gonna put them in jail, and there's nothing that the United States is gonna do because they're a bunch of cowards right now. Well, our leaders are cowards. Our people are not, and yeah, that's how I feel. So I think she was kind of. I think she was right in warning the athletes. She should have did it in a different way. Like, you know, we got our athletes on our way to China. Um, they have been required. Get this. They have been required to download an app on their phone that monitors all of their social media, so that the Chinese Communist Party, can monitor and select what they can send out. NBC, everything that NBC records and any of the media outlets record have to go through the Chinese Communist Party before it is let out to the rest of the world. Yesterday, I saw that the CCP had basically pushed a reporter from in front of his camera and fined him because of something that he did. We never did get the real true answer as to what he was doing, but that's just the Chinese Communist Party. So now we're going to move on, because it is 21 minutes into this thing, and I've probably lost half of my audience because of that, because people just don't want to hear about politics and what really should happen and could happen and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just a bullshit artist anyway, so there you go. So anyways, now we're going to move on to the actual agricultural side of this thing. If you haven't noticed, the Chinese have been purchasing large sums of grain and then dumping a small sum back. So they say they buy 1 million bushels of corn, 1 million metric tons of corn, or 1 million bushels of corn, or whatever the hell they buy. They buy this corn, and then they'll, for a price, and then of course the demand is higher and the price jumps 10 cents, and then they'll sell, they'll cancel orders. They'll cancel that order. Then it goes down, it'll go down. So they sell it at this, or cancel it here. They don't have to pay for it. And then, of course, the demand is lower, and then they buy another block at a lower price. So they save themselves millions of dollars, which is a tactic that's been used all over the world. People have done it. When a country like England or France or Spain does this, it's such a small amount of grain that it really is negligible what they do. And they, it's like, oh, well, we overpurchased, so we're just going to cancel this order. But then you got somebody like Russia or China that's going to buy it back up, and it's just a way to make a bunch of money. But if you really look at what China has purchased, it is like 65% of the grain stores. Okay, the stored grain. Now, I've seen some TikToks of some guys and gals talking about purchasing this grain and how farmers should stop selling their grain to China. I'm like, okay, I get that, I get it. We don't want our grain. We don't want the Chinese to become so powerful that they bulldoze over half of Europe or Asia or wherever the hell they want to go. Well, let's just say Asia. The Chinese have been pushing the limits in Taiwan and the Philippines and other areas of the South China Sea and out there. They are. It's just a fact. They're building an island for military purposes in the South China Sea, or the Philippine Sea, off the Philippines, and the island technically doesn't even belong. Technically, it doesn't belong to them. It's a Philippine island. It was a small island, and they've been hauling coral and rock and stuff, and they've been building it into a 5,000-foot runway. I think it's 5,000 feet. It's pretty long now. They've been warned. They've been told to stop it. The U.S. got involved in it a little bit. They just don't care, because under Donald Trump they stopped, but now they're in full swing again. So they're building bases now. Who did this before? Think about this. We got China. It's like becoming a nation that is growing. It's communist. They don't give a damn about their own people. Well, why should they care about us? Well, the answer to that is they don't. But Japan back in the late 1800s started invading, conquering, taking over large areas of, the Pacific Islanders. They took over Taiwan, I think, in 1895. They were in Cambodia, Vietnam. They were everywhere down there. They did this in the I think 1893 was when they started. They were headed to the Philippines during the Spanish-American War, 1895, where we defeated the Spanish and purchased the Philippine Islands from Spain. We took Midway, let's see, Puerto Rico. We took a lot, but we purchased the Philippines, which pissed off the Philippine people that had fought for their freedom during the Spanish-American War. But we treated the Filipinos with respect and allowed them to do whatever the hell they wanted, and we pumped a lot of money into their economy during that time until the Japanese did on December 8th, 1941. A lot of people don't know that, but Pearl Harbor started on December 7th, 1941, and then 12 hours later, it was December 8th in the Philippines, and they bombed that and invaded. And then, I don't know, 3 or 4 months later, they had complete control of the islands, the 7,107 islands of the Philippines. China is doing that. Russia, now we got Russia. So the Chinese, they buy a lot of grain. They're buying up our grain. Farmers do not have control. There's an argument going on downstairs in Tagalog. The Chinese, let's see, where the hell was I get this argument going on? I don't know if you can hear that. The Chinese are buying this grain for a reason. They're storing it, but they don't buy it from individual farmers. They buy it from people like Cargill, Purdue. They buy wherever they can get it. They buy it from brokers. Brokers purchase it from these other places, and they ship it over there. So for people to stand up and say, farmers, you need to stop selling your grain to China, we have nothing to do with it. The Chinese government doesn't say, hey, Wesley Pandy, one lonely farmer, we'd like to buy the 24,500 bushels that you have stored in your bin. Can you ship it tomorrow? No, that doesn't happen. Mine goes to an elevator, whether it's Purdue, Cargill, there's others, Bungees or things like that. Those are the places that sell it that way. My corn goes to a feed mill where they feed poultry, pork, and beef, and dairy. Of course, there's dairy in there. Probably sheep and goats as well. And that meat is, those animals are, dealt with here in a local way. So my grain doesn't go anywhere out of the country that I know of. They could. There's rail lines there. They could very easily just go ahead and offload a few rail cars if they get too much and ship it to God knows where. But that's okay. That's, whatever. It's fine. I really don't care. Now, China also produces ag chemicals, large amounts of ag chemicals, because China doesn't have to follow the same rules, pollution rules, as what the United States does and other nations around the world. They just don't care. They're communists. They would build a chemical plant in downtown Beijing, which they are there, and just instead of scrubbing the pollutants out of the air with water, I don't know. I'm not a drug user, but they used to have a hookah pipe or whatever. I think the Indians used what they call a hookah, where the what do you call it? The hashish was in the top of this thing, and they'd all sit there and smoke through the water bong, through the water filtration. Well, that's kind of how a scrubber works to take the pollutants out. They don't do that. They sweep the floors and they run it up the industrial chimney out into the air, and it kills fish, it kills people, deforms people, stops plants from growing in their gardens and stuff, and they just don't care. And there's no recourse against the Chinese government. And then, of course, they put it on a barge and to a ship in a shipping container and send it to the United States, where we use the Chinese chemicals on our crops to kill weeds and insects and fungus and things like that. Now, for the Olympics, the Chinese have stopped producing these things because they have to clean up the air quality in Beijing. They don't need to have a bunch of athletes going and covering their nose and their eyes watering and then trying to perform at the top of their game breathing polluted air. So they stopped doing that. They stopped producing these chemicals and has laid the responsibility of agricultural chemicals elsewhere. And of course, elsewhere doesn't exist because we were relying on the Chinese Communist Party to produce our chemicals for us, a vast majority of them. There's other places in the world. Israel produces chemicals for us. I think Loveland Industries is in Israel. Of course, there's Indian companies, that produce chemicals as well. Of course, they've ramped up production, but, when there's a demand, it's the capitalist society, it's supply and demand. If the supply is low and the demand is high, the price goes up. Roundup, $8.35 was the last I paid for Roundup. Not last year, but the year before. Last year I didn't buy any Roundup because I had bought a tote the year before that. This year, $52, and when I get to pick it up, if the price has gone up, then I have to pay the difference. If the price goes down, it's still $52. Go figure that one. So anyway, that's where we are with that. Now we can go on to fertilizer, and another large producer of nitrogen, ammonium nitrate, which is Russia. So Russia has stopped export of their chemical production of ammonium nitrate. I remember a few years back, like in the 1990s, when they had pretty much done away with all the crushing plants in the United States, and they stopped making urea because it could be made cheaper elsewhere, i.e. Israeli potash, Israeli urea, the ammonium nitrate, which I personally do not use dry ammonium nitrate, but I do use a lot of liquid nitrogen, which is a mixture of urea and ammonium nitrate. So the Russians have slowed their production of ammonium nitrate or deportation of ammonium nitrate, so we're not getting it. Right now in Winston-Salem, Virginia, there's a ammonium nitrate plant that's on fire. It was a bagging plant. I believe it was like for Scott's or Home Depot, Lowe's. It was for lawn and garden fertilizers, not really commercial fertilizer, farm commercial fertilizers. So that really hasn't affected the price yet, but it's coming. And another thing is ammonium sulfate at Honeywell. Why Honeywell produces ammonium sulfate? We used to get it from a steel mills, but the steel mills are all gone now from here because, it's cheaper to buy Japanese or Canadian steel. After World War II, the American steel industry had never updated and upgraded their steel producing technology, whereas, Canada did, and Japan, we bombed all their steel mills. Germany, we bombed all their steel mills. And so after World War II, they were like, hey, you know what? We're just going to rebuild our steel mills, and we're going to use the latest and the greatest technologies that we can come up with. And they have continued to update and upgrade. China, cheap coal from North Korea themselves. They have cheap coal there. They are buying coal from us to fire these things. As the jumpin' Joe Biden and Camel Toe Harris decide that coal is too dirty to burn in the United States, they want to shut down coal mines and shut down American factories that burn coal. Their coal-fired generation. It doesn't mean that the coal mines are going to shut down. It just means they're going to deport it to somewhere else, and then it can land in California, and they can whine about pollution there. But yeah, it does. It goes overseas. Coal is still being mined every day, just like it always was. It's being burnt every day, just like it always was. It's just not being burnt here to produce things here. It's being burnt elsewhere so that we have, quote unquote, clean air. Well, if we burned it, it would be cleaner than if we shipped it overseas because it takes oil to get it there. So when they take a coal ship, barge, whatever, cargo ship full of coal to China, it's burning bunker oil to get it there. So somebody's pumping that out of the ground. They don't use coal to fire those things that I know of. I'm pretty sure it's all oil. So instead of just running a rail car down to the local steel mill where we can produce our own steel, burning oil as well, diesel fuel there. Diesel that turns a generator to produce electricity to run the wheels on a engine. Yeah, I don't know whether it's more efficient or not. They claim it is. Gas turbines are long gone now. They don't run those anymore. But, we would run the exhaust through scrubbers, reclaim that sulfur, and then sell it back to farmers for sulfur that we need in the soil. Since they've cleaned up the diesel fuel, taken all the sulfur out of diesel fuel, because, sulfur is poisonous. Sulfur lands on the ground. We don't really breathe too much of it. I'm sure there's some parts per million that we do breathe, but for the most part, diesel exhaust or soot is heavy, and it will land on the soil, and our plants can use them to grow corn and soybeans and wheat and rye and barley and alfalfa and clover and all these things that we need. So now we have to get sulfur out of the Deca battery plant, right? That's where our sulfur comes from. Or ammonium sulfate that comes out of Honeywell from the nylon production. That's what they use. That's what they use sulfuric acid in nylon plastic production, and the end result is ammonium sulfate, which we buy. It's nice ammonium sulfate too. Ammonium sulfate is a much more usable sulfur than the Deca battery plant sulfur. The sulfuric acid from that. You can only put 2 pounds of the sulfur uran, 2 pounds equivalent of sulfur to the acre through that source of sulfur, and it doesn't sound like enough. Whereas 210024 is what ammonium sulfate is. So 21 pounds per 100 is nitrogen, and 24 pounds per 100 pounds is sulfur. So you go and you put, for corn, 1,000 pounds of ammonium sulfate down, and you're going to grow a hell of a crop of corn. But you better be putting calcium in line with that, because ammonium sulfate is acidic as hell. So calcium goes along with that, which makes it work really well. And that sulfur is very available to the plants. I use ammonium sulfate. I try to stay away from urea. I try to go with ammonium sulfate every time. The compost that I'm getting, they use ammonium sulfate in mushroom production, and I will have enough sulfur through the compost that I will not have to purchase ammonium sulfate this year, if I can get enough of that stuff hauled. And I think I'm going to go down and get a load today. Just go down, grab a load, no hay down, just go get a load of compost and bring it home. It's just, it is 9:30 in the morning, and I've been bullshitting a lot. So anyway, so with Russia shutting down ammonium nitrate production, which makes sulfur uran, 28, 32% is what I use. No water. I don't like buying water. If I wanted to buy water, I would go down to the store and buy a bottle of water that I could drink, even though it's full of calcium chloride, another chemical. And so there you go. I hope you enjoyed this rant. I think 38 minutes is more than enough for me talking about Nancy Pelosi. And to end this, I think that Nancy Pelosi should have said, hey, on a personal note to the athletes, a letter from her office. Hey, guys, you're going into a communist country. You're not used to the way the communists work. We know a little bit about the communist way. Don't do anything to piss them off. If you do, say something, you will face the consequences. But in a public forum on TV, she should have said, this is a warning to the Chinese Communist government. Do anything to our athletes, and we will sanction the ever-loving shit out of you. We will stop selling you grain. You people can starve to death. Just behave yourselves, because you have been blessed with a propaganda, machine known as the Olympics. And the Olympians and America have been invited to your country. They should be afforded the same rights and responsibilities as they are here in the United States, and you cannot hold them accountable for what they see and what they say unless it is of a violent nature towards your police or government. And that would have been the end of it. It would have been like, well, you're not allowed to come then. Okay, all right, fine. That's fine. But that's how I think she should have done it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a nice night or day or whatever. Hope you enjoyed listening to this. If you didn't, well, oh well, too bad. I don't care.